Hello, everybody. Welcome to Flickr and Flow. My name is Raimo Benedetti. I'm a video artist from São Paulo, Brazil. I create this project, Flickr and Flow, a series of online interviews with researchers, curators, and specialists involved with the archaeology of the moving image. The idea is to investigate, listen, and learn about that. We have the support of Pontifícia Universidade Católica from São Paulo, thanks to Professor Marcos Bastos, e o curso Comunicação e Multimeios, e also the support of Universidade Estadual do Maringá, and thanks to Professor Rodrigo Gontijo. This is the fourth episode. We have the Stephen Herbert, Martha Brown, and Professor Arki Hutamu last week. And today we are going to present Seoyoung Kim. Seoyoung Kim worked as a conservator for over 12 years for various museums, including the Wallace Collection, Glasgow Museums, and St. Louis Art Museum. She's curator at Kingston Museum, which holds one of the preeminent Muybridge collections. Seoyoung also works as a freelancer curator and has curated various contemporary art exhibitions. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Seoyoung Kim. Thank you. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Hello.
I can hear you. Hello.
Oh, it's really a pleasure to meet you. After 4 years ago, we met each other in Kingston. We have we met in the museum. You borrowed me a book, and you said, "Please, Raimo, don't come back with. Send me this book back." And I forgot. And I was in the train station. Oh, I said, the book, I have to. And this kind of adventure that happens when you are traveling, no? So I went to the Bible and then put there, because the museum, the Kingston Museum, is connected to a Bible, no? Bibliothèque, a public.
Oh, yes. So, first of all, thank you for having me. It's nice to be invited. So Kingston Museum and Library are sort of joined up. So library was opened in 1903 and museum opened in 1904, the year when Muybridge died.
Okay. And also there is a connection because Muybridge saw the library, that the building of the library was, and he had the idea to donate his. How is his story between Muybridge and the Kingston Museum?
Yeah. So as you know, Muybridge was born in 1830 in Kingston. And when he was 20, he went to America, did all those fantastic things and all those scandal and all that. And between here and there, he was in UK and Europe and all that. But finally, he came home in 1894 and lived in Kingston for about 10 years. And he died in 1904. But he became quite good friends with someone called Benjamin Carter, who was librarian to Kingston Library. So they built that kinds of good friendship. And we don't know exactly why Muybridge decided to donate his personal collection to Kingston Museum. But the will, which he prepared 3 months before he died, stated he wanted to donate his personal collection for benefit of people in Kingston. So he made the decision to donate his collection to a museum, but museum wasn't completed then. But he knew museum was being built in his hometown. Unfortunately, Muybridge died 5 months before the museum was able to open, so he didn't see the full completion. But obviously he knew, but also actually he donated various items beforehand, like that paper disc set was donated earlier when he was live. So he made a very close relationship with his hometown. So it is a very interesting aspect, and then that personal donation actually is one of the key elements which makes Kingston Collection quite important and significant, because that unique connection is only you can find it in Kingston Collection.
And what did he donate on that? What was this private equipment? What was the main objects and also papers? What did he donate?
Yeah, so roughly we have about 3,500 items of Muybridge items, which is one of the biggest in the world. So main bulk of the collection is a glass lantern slide, which he used to present his lectures. You know, he traveled all over the UK, America, and Europe during the lecture tour, the very famous lecture tour. So anyway, so that we've got about 2,000 odd number of that lantern slide, which is very unique. Having said that, some of the lantern slide are not Muybridge photos. Some of them are reference images. So he was using, so he was using like historical picture or drawings of horse and all that stuff. So if you think about it now, if you do PowerPoint presentation, right, for lecture, you will use reference images, don't you? You won't just show your thing. You know, you need a reference things. So he was using those images. Another unique item came with the donation is 1878 San Francisco panorama. You know, the big 360-degree mammoth plate panorama view of San Francisco. There are 9 panoramas are known, so we have one of them, which is rare items. Also, we have 2 copies of animals. Attitude of Animals in Motion, which is 1881 publication, which is very important.
With 11 volumes, no?
I think it's 15 known to be made, but there might have been more, but that's what we know of, you know, in institutions now. And Zoroscope, obviously, that's a highlight of our collection, which hopefully we'll talk about later on. And also, we have a couple of personal collections. So we have also the disc. I have to mention the disc, which was used for Zoroscope. So we have many of them. We have monopoly of them, except 3 out there. We have everything. So that's a very unique collection to Kingston Collection.
And also the scrapbook.
Yeah, that's right. I have to mention
which we are going to talk later as well.
Yeah,
but mention that.
It is very important in a way, because it is kinds of autobiographic sort of reminder, and you know, it's prepared by Muybridge himself. So yeah, we will talk about it later, but yeah, that's very unique. That's only you know, you can find it in Kingston Museum.
And I remember also have his own magic lantern projector as well, as a biennial magic lantern.
Yeah,
also.
Yeah, we have one
with the original box. It's amazing, no?
Yeah, so so that's what's unique about our collection, because what we have at the museum is that what he had, you know, what he traveled back from America to UK. So in that sense, it's quite unique collection.
That's great. That's great. I read that in your biography, in your short biography, that you are conservator. I will make a very not a stupid question, but I will confess that I don't know what does a conservator makes. Can you explain me this simple question, please, Seoyoung Kim?
So yeah, so before I became a curator, I actually was a conservator. So conservator is the people who look after collections. So people care for collections, so to speak, welfare. So lots of preservation, some degree of restoration involved. So is that collections care aspect is the job of conservator. So yes, I was doing conservation for many years. But obviously I can't call myself a conservator now because I haven't been practicing for many years now. But yeah, so that was my background. So in that sense, it's quite handy because I'm quite handy. I'm quite practical compared to many other curators, generally speaking. So, so in
I
that sense,
understand.
it's quite good.
Yes, you don't have to give your backwards to your past and all the things that you learned being as a conservator. And
Yeah.
does the conservator has any kind of relation, but not only with care, but above that with showing as well, or not?
Yeah, I mean, uh, nowadays that people are very interested in sort of behind the scene. So, there are lots of even TV programs about collections care nowadays in the UK at least. And people want to know how things were made, how things are now, the history of it. So conservation isn't just about current condition of the artifacts. Conservators look into how things were made. So in a way, the relationship between curator and conservator always been close anyway. So, we work together, two group of people work together all the time. So in that sense, my sort of career trajectory, if you call it, was a quite interesting one. But I enjoyed being a conservator as well as being a curator now too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I would like to ask you to show a video from Kingston Museum to the audience know what does the museum do. It's a very good production. Where is here? It's 5 minutes long, so I will ask you to. I will present in full screen presentation. So, and after that, we can talk more details of the main aspects of the museum. That's okay for you?
So,
Okay, so excuse me.
Artist, inventor, showman, murderer. Over the course of an adventurous life, Edward Muybridge played all these characters and became a key pioneer in photography and the development of motion picture projection. Born Edward James Muggeridge at the 9th of April, 1830 in Kingston upon Thames, Muybridge was ambitious to see the world beyond his surroundings. At the age of 20, he sailed west, crossing the ocean to America, a land still under construction and unexplored at this time. It was here that Muybridge made a name for himself as a successful bookseller until 1860, when he suffered a severe head injury in a stagecoach crash whilst travelling across the States. During his recovery, Muybridge exchanged his books for images and adopted a new vocation as a photographer.
Muybridge started as a landscape photographer, so he was recording fast changing San Francisco in 1860s and 70s. He took lots of photographs in sequence, showing many motions of animals and humans, and he's very famous for his horse photography. And followed on that, he started a moving image projection using the machine called the Zoroscope, which Kingston Museum has held.
Over the course of his life, he was also a successful lecturer and the subject of a public trial for the murder of his wife's lover. This is the story that history tells of Muybridge. But how did Muybridge tell his story? When he died in 1904, Muybridge bequeathed much of his equipment and life's work to Kingston Museum, plus his scrapbook. Seldom seen by the public, the scrapbook provides a unique insight into the life of Edward Muybridge.
The scrapbook is very unique for various reasons. The main reason is it's only one. There is no copy of a scrapbook. In a way, scrapbook is a kind of autobiography of Muybridge himself. Conveniently, he didn't include anything negative about himself. So scrapbook is about his legacy he wanted to show the world. If I have to say one big focus of our scrapbook is about media attention about his motion studies. Muybridge was involved in very interesting, colorful personal life, but there's no story about that at all. So scrapbook is the way he wanted to be shown to the world after his death. Through scrapbook, Muybridge kind of presented his modern persona, which all we are familiar with. This like modern celebrities kinds of characters. Like he was certainly self-promoter. He wanted to promote himself whenever possible. Other people or other institutions mainly talked about what Muybridge did in terms of work, the photography and the motion picture and everything. But scrapbook tells us a lot about who he was and how he wanted to be presented.
Muybridge had complete control over the development of his scrapbook and was carefully selective over what filled its pages. Think of this behavior within the context of the modern world. Is this not what we do when we use social media to reflect our lives?
Some people do use social media to record their activity. Some people probably use social media in terms of self-promotion. I think scrapbook was both. More people are interested in Muybridge because of modern image technology like a GIF. That short animated images are very similar to what Muybridge would have done with the Zoroscope. Visually, they are very similar. Also, in principle, they're the same thing. Muybridge's legacy is visible internationally because we live in very visual culture. But at the same time, that connection between Kingston Museum and Muybridge, we try to celebrate his personal collection, intentional donation, which other collections do not have. So that's another special aspect of Kingston Museum collection.
That's great. Very well produced. You have a good panorama. What does the principal aspects of the museum? And sorry about this personal question. How did you come to Kingston? And because I think, of course, we know that we can suppose you are not English born. But how did you come? What's your personal history until Kingston, please?
Yeah, so I'm not born British. So I was I'm from South Korea. I came here many years ago, though. I came here in 1999, so more than 20 years ago. I studied I did my master's degree in conservation, and as I said, I worked in various museums in UK and America. But I live here. I live not in Kingston, but town next to Kingston, so it's about 4 miles away. So I already was living in this area, and when job came up, the curator job, I felt quite passionate about it because it's my local museum. And obviously, before then, I was commuting to central London, and I wanted to make some change, in my lifestyle and all that stuff. So it just was right many ways, and so I went for it and I got it. And funnily enough, I knew Muybridge obviously before I joined the Kingston Museum and then everything, because I'm not photography specialist before I joined the service. I didn't know how much Kingston had, rather. So I knew Kingston has Muybridge collection, which is important, but I didn't know the scale and the true significance of the collection until I joined.
But
So,
you just discovered, sorry to interrupt, you just discovered the scale of the collection after had the job or before?
Yeah. Well, I knew it's a big collection before I got the job, but I didn't know the details or the significance of the Kingston collection. So so I joined at very end of 2016 the service. Sorry, 2014 I joined.
Okay.
2014 I joined the Kingston Museum. And then I got fascinated by Muybridge Collection, and then I could see the potential and the true significance of this collection, not just for the collection's sake, but for museum and for Kingston area, because museum is a city museum, so it belongs to city council, so it is a public museum, not private museum. And then I could see the great potential of Muybridge Collection. So yes, I decided to study more. So I started my PhD in Muybridge studies in 2017. So
And of course, you have also on your own hands the possibility to study directly to the archive, because I have to say that the big part of this collection is stored. It's not available to the public visitation, no?
At the moment, access isn't very good, but the collection will be returning to Kingston area this year.
Ah, really?
I'm working on it very hard at the moment. So we plan to bring the Kingston the collection back to Kingston area this year. At the moment, as you said, has been stored in offsite store for a couple of years, but it's coming back home soon.
Okay, but if in spite of the collection is coming back to Kingston, it will be shown to the public, or you have to schedule, or more for researchers, etc.
As you saw, that we already have about 60 items on display, which is more than anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
But the items in the store, you have to make the appointment to come and see it, because it's a very fragile, it's a delicate object, so you can't just turn up. But having said that, we'll be starting cataloging project very soon, so that access to collection will be a bit limited, but it will be better than before. So we are conscious about the access of the collection. So hopefully in the future will be much better situation.
And also, I think it's part of the idea of bringing back with the right conditions, etc. You have, like Stephen said in the first interview here, showing has a problem with a space. It's not so easy to have a space in the museum. You have many things to show, and of course, to show 3,000 magic lantern slides, you need, and 60 color disc. You have to have space, and etc. It's not so easy, and especially in a museum that was originally built in the beginning of 20th century, which was a quite small museum, and that in that moment, no. So after studying the Muybridge, I think that most of the researchers that are connected with Muybridge became a kind of fan club, like more than a lovely. It's a passionate relation that we deal with Muybridge. I'm talking about myself, I think. Do you have the same passionate way of?
Did
And when you discover that it was a little, I think it's a very nice. It was before your PhD. When did started that relationship with Muybridge?
I guess it's soon after I started in Kingston in 2014. That's why I decided to do PhD. But I think already Stephen and Martha said something similar. But Muybridge is such a fascinating character. Personally, if you ask me if I like Muybridge as a person, my answer will be probably no. I don't think he was a nice man. He's a murderer. but it's so fascinating character, and then his life. Other than this public private scandal, it's just his career, and then his attitude towards his work and what he did, and then all the techniques he used and the work he produced, and then all those manipulation he did, the quality of his work, and everything is so fascinating. It's not that straightforward. So it's like a peeling onion, as they say. You like I discovered one thing, and then hang on a minute, and this discovery leading into another question, and it's just endless. So it is it is a very exhausting, but it's a very interesting field. Muybridge study, it is very interesting, and also it's very, in some ways, very relevant to our modern world. As I said in the video, his persona is very much like persona we are familiar with, the modern sort of contemporary celebrities. And that's why I think some people compare Muybridge and Andy Warhol, for example, that
Okay.
the aspect of self-promotion, and the like changing their personality and all that stuff. It is a little bit similar, but yeah, so it is a fascinating subject to study. And also the work itself, when he was producing photography, he was very active, and he was very really busy. So many materials he produced,
And
and
accurate as well. His
yeah, and also So anyway, it's fascinating subject.
but of course, but the Muybridge's fame nowadays in contemporary moments reveals how fascinating he is, because I have sometimes the sensation that Muybridge is more, it's much more known that really be studied. If you understand, sorry about my English, the difference. He's so popular, but there are still many things to discover about him, and also there are many legends about him that are still more popular. Do you think that Muybridge is becoming rediscovered in a kind of wave? Of course, he's not only not in the shadow, but it's a kind of wave. Has he been rediscovering in the past maybe 10 years, like your generation, Seoyoung?
Yes, I think it is fair to say Muybridge has been rediscovered many times, and certainly this the use of social media, and then this digital technology, imaging technology, I think is contributed to his sort of fame, if you like. Certainly, many people reference Muybridge for their work. Many artists, including yourself, you refer you put the reference to Muybridge's work. But what I found really interesting is when many artists say my work is influenced by Muybridge's work, but actually many of those work to me is influenced by Maret's work. So that's the interesting aspect, because Muybridge is much better known than Maret. People think anything to do with the corona photography is something to do with Muybridge. But as you know, it's not true,
Yeah.
But because Muybridge did this sequential photograph, many people without much knowledge in the field do not distinguish what's done by Muybridge or what's done by Maret. So I actually counted the hashtag number on social media about 2 years ago. I can't remember exact figure, but hashtag Muybridge is about 4 times higher than hashtag Maret, for example. So certainly Muybridge's fame, just even namesake, is not comparable with the Maret, but it isn't representing what they did or anything like that. It's just about that the people's interest in Muybridge is higher, but that's a lot to do with that the complexity of his work, and then that the rediscovery or reinterpretation of his work, and also media in general. I think because he had a very interesting personal life, it's just the right subject for the media. It's that murder and this love affair. It's more to talk about him. So as you know, there are lots of materials produced about Muybridge. It isn't just about art or photography. There are books and there are poems and there is music and so many other things about Muybridge and his life and his work. That's why this legacy is quite interesting to me, because it's like multiplying. So it isn't not necessarily about what he did. It's about what people think what he did, and then they produce something from it, and then what they produce is have another sort of offspring of legacy. So it's like multiplying, if you like. So that's what is interesting, and that multiplication is faster than ever because of internet. Anyone can see, anyone can do hashtag, so that the spread is much faster. So for that reason, what you said is correct. I think that the interest in Muybridge probably higher than ever.
Yes. And also in this kind of shadow part of his history, and one of his legends, one in particular makes me very curious, is the idea of reconstitution of his, the transformation of his photographs into movies. When I read in Martin Brown's book, Picture in Time, that Muybridge in life never could animated his photograph, but not drawing. I special saying that his photographs, or it means that never in life Muybridge saw his photograph sequence in movement like we see today on the internet, emulated like GIF, etc. It's a kind of amazing information and a wrong information about him, because in life he did it's a post-mortem dead reconstitution. Do you think it's not moment to say, people, hello, that's not Muybridge, it's online services, it's Photoshop animated, because he could, when he died in 1904, the cinematographer had 9 years, he could animate it if he wish, but he didn't. So it's not the moment not to show his photographs in movement.
I think that a lot, actually. I think a lot about what he actually intended, and then what we think he did. That's why I'm interested about this reinterpretation of aspect of his work. You are very correct. He didn't actually did much when he came to Kingston. What he did was published 2 books. But he didn't take any photo. There is no single photograph of England or Kingston whatsoever. He did a lecture tours. He continued his lecture tours. He did lectures and stuff. But the last one was 1897. So who knows what he was up to? But you're correct. What he did isn't actually film at all, technically. So many media sometimes call Muybridge as a father of cinema and all that stuff. I feel not comfortable about that, because he's not. He probably, you can probably call him father of animation. That's, I think, is acceptable, because what he did was basically drawn, what he did for the Zoroscope disc is an overstretched hand-drawn image based on his photograph. And then they are sequenced. So they are more, the principle of the Zoroscope disc is very close to animation, but it's not film. But at the same time, what's interesting is though what he did in Chicago in 1893. he built, purpose-built hall, dupluxographic hall for projection of his lectures. That's very much like modern cinema. As far as I know, that's probably one of the very first purpose-built sort of a screening facility.
Yes.
So in that sense, so if you call cinematic experience as you sitting in the big room with a big screen projection, Muybridge did that. So if you think like that, what he did in 1893 is related to cinematic experience. But in terms of a technical aspect, we over evaluate in a way, what Muybridge did. And many people do.
But by the way, do you like the idea of to call Muybridge like the father of art technology? Because he was one of the pioneers, and this is a very important point, that his work is completely different from Mahe in the way of introducing aesthetics, correcting mistakes, editing, transforming, and using in a artistic intention. And we involved with very high level technology, electricity, people working with it, with cutting edge equipment, etc. Do you think it's a great way to call him the father of art technology?
In a way, I would feel more comfortable calling Muybridge father of artistic technology and father of film, put it that way. So, there is a lot of discussion when people talk about whether what Muybridge did was science or art and all that. To me, it is a quite complex question.
Really?
But I think what you need to remember is that what he did in Palo Alto was meant to be science. Right?
Yeah.
Was commissioned by Stanford for the most scientific reason. That what they want, the aim of the project was scientific related, scientific experiment, right? They wanted to prove something, so that therefore it is more scientific. But Muybridge couldn't help his artistic flair, so he just did all those artistic things. Same for the when he was in Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania project. What he did, animal locomotion. It meant to be initially started as a science project. As you know, there are many scientists. Wasn't necessarily they did, but the university had a committee of science people. So it was meant to be science. Again, Muybridge couldn't help. So he manipulated a lot, especially that the final product, that the assembly of that different pictures is not really scientific at all. So if anyone asks me whether I think Muybridge was an artist or more to do with the science direction, I will put him much closer to the artist, right? But it might move a little bit, depends on what he did. But what we have to remember is towards the end of his life, he said himself, he wanted to be, what he did, basically bridging between science and art. So he recognized the legacy of his work will be always in between science and art. So when we talk about what Muybridge did, I think we got to consider what he saw his work himself, and then what influence his work has on our culture. So for that reason, I'm comfortable enough to say Muybridge. I think Muybridge can be called sort of father of what do you call
Art
it?
technology.
Art technology. Yeah, yeah. So it is. Yeah, I think it's a complicating, it's complicating, issue.
Yes, that's why I would love to discuss and to have a kind of talk with this team. I would ask you to show you another video. I will make a improvisation here. It's a video from the Palo Alto series that is inside my book. Maybe I don't know if you watched it or not. And the first part is with Martha Brown, and the second part is with Stephen Herbert. I would like to show this second part with Stephen Herbert here. Okay.
So, but it's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
I'll give pause, buffering, please, go. Okay, go. Is it good for you, Sia?
Let's talk about
I can see.
difference, the connections
okay.
between the...
Once you get onto the specifics of these things. Yeah, well, okay.
So I realized that they are
Yeah.
except the same. And here, everything is different.
We know that it's not a different sequence. They didn't change the numbers on the boards at Palo Alto because clearly from the horse, they're clearly the same, the same images.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very good point. I've not gone into any of this analysis. I've not gone into this at all. And this is a big area to look at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the answer to your question is, I don't know. The initial thing to say is that Muybridge significantly manipulated almost all of his images, every kind of image he significantly manipulated. This is a page from the Attitudes of Animals in Motion.
Yes.
We know that because there's a pencil number or pen number here.
Mm-hmm.
Here, there's an artificiality has been introduced because it's too clean a silhouette, and the rider is a very clearly delineated silhouette, and I just think that's been painted in. You've got the outline here, and it's been manipulated, painted in to give you a more distinct image. Now, the question as to why the background has changed. And the terrible kind of realisation there is that how would you get that image of the horse onto a newly created graphic background? How would you do that? You've got to cut the horse out like it's crazy, isn't it? It's like a paper cut of each horse and position it on the new background.
Yes.
But that's the sort of thing Muybridge would do. You know, Muybridge is using CGI, computer graphics, before it existed. What he's doing is the same thing, but he's finding manual ways of doing this. And whatever that takes is what he does. Sometimes it's really, really hard. So it's not photographic, it's informed by photography. Or I prefer to say informed by the camera.
Okay.
But what's really clever is that the life of the motion is still there. Because these are world-shatteringly important photographs. This is a photograph that's the equivalent to a photograph of splitting the atom or something.
So it's a kind of this video, this approaching of this question makes me proud of give a new aspect of his career biography, and
You got to have your book translated in English. So I've got the copy of it. I can't read it.
yes, I'm sorry. So the idea of the artistic idea of trying to reach the best result in the same position with a very strict and rigid artistic behavior on it. Behavior in the meaning of creation, recreation. I think that's the part of Muybridge biography which most make me fascinated with. So, do you think in these Palo Alto series, and these are like his iconic photographs of his work, there is a kind of gambling, not gambling, but in a kind of manipulated aspect that he never revelate in his life. Do you think it's part of Muybridge could do that, dealing with a kind of mystery?
Yeah, I mean manipulation, absolutely. You know, he was a king of manipulation. So to me, among half dozen books he published, the attitude of animals in motion, you know, the 1881 book you just showed, we talk about with Stephen, is the most important book. The publication, it's not so much a book, isn't it? It's more it's an album, isn't it? But that's to me is much more important than animal locomotion, because when he produced Animal Locomotion in 1887, he already mastered the manipulation. But the 1881 publication, he was trying out. He was trying this and that, and I think that's, to me, that's why that publication is much more interesting and fascinating. And what Stephen said about the manipulating lines and stuff, I completely agree. What he said. I had a great opportunity to visit many Muybridge collections in US and related collection in France before pandemic. And the Stanford, the Cantor Art Center has some lantern slide of showing that very same image. You can actually see the lines hand drawn. So
Oh, really?
it is. Yes, obviously, I don't mean that's original because it's a lantern slide. So, but yeah, so some degree, you know, without question, some degree of manipulation went in the Palo Alto work. Yeah, so it is interesting. And then what you said about this artistic sort of flair and the manipulation, that's there throughout his life. You know, he, as I said earlier, he couldn't just help. You know, to him, it's probably like a obsessive sort of a desire to make it look different, look moving. So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. So I think this concept of him presenting movement is a lot to do with how we read, really. So you know, when you see picture of sequential images of Muybridge's photograph, people seem to think they can see the movement, but can you? You see, this is interesting aspect, because people talk about Muybridge, this movement photograph. Many people, including myself, as a viewer or a spectator, we are trying to read the movement from his photo, right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it. So that's an interesting aspect. So obviously nowadays we know how things move. You know, we've seen thousands of slow motion pictures and stuff, so we are very used to seeing these sequential things.
Yeah,
So
but
when
not
we
in
see,
19th century.
yeah. So imagine in the 1880s, you know, someone presents you the picture, very unusual picture of something, of
Yeah.
lots of small pictures. And then if someone tell you this is innovative pictures of moving holes, your brain probably automatically try to read the movement from the photo.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about how much sort of interpretive reading we have given to this autograph. It's something to think of, something to think about.
Yes.
It's
I,
a
I,
little bit like a semiotic approach. Is that concept of denotation and connotation? What it shows? Does it really what it is?
yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's amazing. And also I remember while I was writing my book, the daughter of my sister, nephew, I don't know, I don't remember, went and then she said, "Oh, Uncle Raimo, what are you writing about?" And I showed one my bridge pictures, and she was like 10 years old, and I realized that everyone with every age, when see a my bridge or a Mahe picture, gets a little bit involved with I think there these semiotic aspects in your brain. You start to trying to not just to see the photo but to read it
Mm.
and to make conclusions about it. Do you think that aspect makes his work very communicative, and that's why it
Mm.
became very popular?
Yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely. So that's what I mean by this reinterpretation aspect, which I'm researching at the moment. I try to actively involve audience or spectator or viewer, whatever you want to call it, or reader even, It's about how we read these images and then how we produce what we read. It's like someone like yourself, the artist, may or produce some material which are inspired by Muybridge's work or life or whatever. But as I said earlier, that is the one we also see. So, you were once viewer, right? As an artist, you were spectator of his work, and now you are producing his work. So is this some sort of organic sort of development? The one was once a viewer, and now you are producer of something. So it is that kind of chain reaction, is moving. It's a sort of evolution, if you like. So it is. I mean, I guess same thing is applied to loads of other things. It isn't just Muybridge, but Muybridge in particular, it is interesting because there is a lot of relevance in terms of the visual digital technology. So to speak, Muybridge captured something people couldn't see, but nowadays with the virtual reality and all that stuff, people can even do all sorts of things which didn't even exist. So it is, to me, there is some conceptual parallel between what Muybridge did in 1870s and nowadays, in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. I would like to reach the aspects of his career is the lanternist. I don't know the word in English. Performer, projectionist, the lecturer. Okay. And he was a very talented lecturer in his life, no? And had
Yes.
many different presentations. Can you talk a little bit about his career, like as a lecturer?
So roughly, Muybridge spent about 15 years as a lecturer. But I think what you said earlier, as the first word, the lanternist, in a way, it is applicable too, because his lecture would have involved lots of lantern, projecting lantern slides, as I said, which we have lots of at the museum. So that's quite correct term too. So so he went to all over the UK, lots of places in America, many places in Europe, doing the lectures. Some of them was some parts of it were using Zoroscope, using disc, and some parts would have been just lantern slide show, if you like. but he would have been talking about that the movement and all that. So yeah, so he was very performative character. I wish I obviously it's impossible, but I sort of imagine a lot about the content and his presentation, how he would have been like, and I'm sure he was quite dramatic, and he would have been very charismatic. That's what I can imagine. But yes, I just want to show you, maybe we can see. This is a postcard, which Kingston Museum sells, but this is an image of the Zoroscope. So if this rotates, if you can imagine,
Yeah.
the life size, this dancing lady would have been
Yeah.
projected on the wall. So again, in 1880 or early 1890s, they would have been mesmerizing. It's like this person is like dancing, although it's a very short movement, it's keep repeating same thing, like this, but still would have been fascinating to the people at that time.
Yes, also. Yes, of course. I think there is a very important aspect on it because the idea of animated was not created by Muybridge himself, and that's makes no difference for me. The idea of pioneering, it's a complicated idea, no? I feel like that. And also because the invention of animated drawings was related to 60 years ago, 1830. Of course, you know that 1832 with phenakistoscope, which has the same aspect from zoopraxiscope discs. But what is the difference from the zoopraxiscope disc between the other cinetic objects that were around at philosophical instruments or around at that time?
As you said, the Zoroscope and the phenakistoscope probably share the similar principle, but the fundamental difference is that the phenakistoscope is a viewing device. You only see yourself. The Zoroscope is a projection device, so that the involving that audience is the main difference to me. So, you can watch this, as I said, a life-size moving subject with many other people. That the feeling of sharing, the feeling of viewing something, watching something together, again, as I said, it's very cinematic experience. So that's probably one of the main difference. Again, Muybridge, as I said, didn't use, this is glass disc. There are 16-inch disc and then 12-inch disc. So there are two different sizes, but these are not film strips like what we know of, the film. So what he did wasn't directly technologically related to film as we know, but that the concept is related. That's how I see.
Yes. And there is also one aspect that Stephen pointed, that these discs was informed by the photograph. So you could trust in the real aspect of the movement. It was not only the idea of an artist, the way he invented it on his hand, but since they were, how did the Muybridge draw these books, these discs? He used the photograph.
Yes.
Basis,
Yeah.
no?
Yeah, it is. I mean, some of the images are not really photographic. So later on, he became a little bit over the top. So he introduced imaginary like sceneries and stuff. But principally, he drew the images based on his photograph, but he elongated just to compensate that distortion. So when these are spun, the images apparently look squashed. So
Yeah.
he made them a bit low, the wider. So when they are spun, they look like normal. But the
Yeah.
images itself would have been based on the original photograph. I might hold on. I just bring something else.
Yes, please.
So this is another disc postcard. If you
Yeah.
see here, this is monkeys going up and down of the tree, but these trees are not photograph based. They are
Yeah.
completely imaginary drawing. So some parts like this are based on the photograph. This is done in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But the monkeys maybe, but these palm trees and all that stuff are not photographic at all.
Yes, but this is especially the on this monkey series. It's part of the end of his career, no? Or because before that were more related with photography or not? That's a question for you.
So loads of these were prepared for that 1893 Chicago World Fair. So
Yeah.
that the hall I talked about earlier. So he thought somehow what he wanted to show would have been great commercial success. He prepared a lot. He made a souvenir to buy and all sorts, but it wasn't successful at all. So I think that's why he wanted to do this fancy thing, but he was very regretful actually of doing this. So in 1897, I think, he wrote the letter to artists who did all that drawing, and then who was living in America. He told him to destroy all of those discs because he was a bit kind of ashamed of what he did. So he didn't want to leave this fancy hand drawn disc. So I don't think disc itself of these kinds of imaginary drawing is something he want us to remember him of, but we do.
And there is a kind of mystery because the Zoopraxicopical Hall in the 1893 Chicago Fair was a kind of not well-known experience since he has been there for less time that he used to be. We don't know how many public. There is no only few documentation about that, and there is the idea of if he had shown these color discs. Do you have any new information about this period in this World Fair in 1893 World Fair?
I mean, as you said, it's not much known actually. In fact, there isn't much even picture about that. I think the Chicago City Museum, I think, has some information about the fair itself, not necessarily specifically about Muybridge's work, but yeah, so he wasn't successful at all. So I think he erected this amazing thing, amazing hall. I think he demolished it quite soon. He only lasted, I think, about 2 weeks or maybe less than 2 weeks. So I think that failure hurt his pride. I suspect that might have been one of the main reasons he left America, perhaps. Who knows? But I think it would have upset him quite a lot. But the thing is, it was 1893. Other people were already doing proper moving, filmic activity. He wasn't following the trend, you see. He didn't reinvent himself somehow. He was trapped in this illusion of himself being a great person or great sort of achiever. He invented the Zoroscope in 1879.
Yeah.
So, it's a long time ago, since 1893. But he wasn't really tried hard enough to do something new. So who knows, if Muybridge move on to something new technology, he might have been very different, and we might have seen him very differently. But at the same time, his life might have been a bit less interesting.
Yeah.
He sort of was full of himself. He captured in that all of himself, and then he didn't catch up with that all the development elsewhere.
And also the atmosphere of a world fair, it's like a very popular stuff. Of course, we have this kind of high technology, science, everything is together. But in terms of entertainment, in the aspect that Muybridge goes between art, science, lecturing, high class lecture from high level people, the space or the atmosphere of a world fair, it doesn't seem that it's the natural habitat for him, no? And
No.
better go to theaters, academy, etc., no?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's an element of that, and especially where he showed his presentation, there is other like sort of circus-like shows and other things. So there are loads of attractions there. It's a quite high competition for him. But as I said, what he was showing wasn't that new by the time. It was already quite yesterday built to it.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I kind of wonder if he was successful, all that, he might have stayed in America, and maybe he didn't donate his stuff to Kingston Museum. That's one way of thinking. So there's always things happen for the reason. So.
Yeah. That's really, really fine. I think we could talk about a little bit more about the zoo praxiscope. Okay, I will show every time I look here in that position, it's because I'm kind of researching. Okay, but I can still listen, keep paying attention. Just to show a photograph from the ones who don't know the zoo praxiscope, is this instrument here. Open image. Where is it? In new tab here. Whoa. So we have here. So this is the original zoo praxiscope. Original because you have just one, except from this.
Chimney doesn't belong to it. Yeah.
Doesn't belong. Can you talk a little bit from the zoo praxiscope and the importance from Muybridge and from the collection as well, please?
Yeah, so it is, as you said, is one and only. There is no one else that has it, although there are a couple replicas out there, including very good replica in Science Museum in London, actually in Bradford. So the disc, which you can see in the screen, goes in the between that two parts, and when it's spun, you have to use the shutter disc too. So shutter disc and the actual disc move opposite direction. So when you use the handle, which is the sewing machine handle, when you turn that, the disc move, and the lens lamp house you can see at the end, that the lens bit, basically simply that projected onto the screen. So you can manipulate the size of the projection. So I think when Muybridge did that, the image would have been very big. So if it was a horse, it would have been horse size, so maybe even bigger. So it would have been very, as I said earlier, would have been quite something. But so it is one and only one in the world, and Muybridge obviously carried this machine back to Kingston, which he would have built this in Palo Alto because it was done in 1879. We think this one was invented or built for Muybridge to prove the picture was actually lifelike. So when he did that picture of the running horse, people couldn't simply believe he took the picture of this moving horse, and the people thought he somehow faked some degree. So he wanted to prove them wrong. That's what we know of the reason of the invention of this thing. And the Kingston Museum also has the carrying box, wooden box of this machine. So yeah, so it is probably the most important item held at Kingston Museum. So it is very important one, but it is on display. So if if you come and visit us in Kingston, you can see it yourself. I can't hear you, Remy.
Oh, sorry, it was down here. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I would like also to show another video from the Zoo Praxiscope, which also... How you with your time? Are you okay? Can we
Yeah,
talk?
I'm all right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's the good part to make independent projects. We have our time as much as we want. So I would like to show a video from my book as well, and there is a speech from your partner, Charlotte Samuels, and then afterwards we can talk a little bit more. Oh, sorry about that. Is it running for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Are you inside the museum? Because I'm not here in the image.
So, do you want to ask me questions, or do you want me to
Yes.
talk?
What occasion did he use to use the Zoopraxiscope?
Well, Muybridge gave a series of
Sorry to interrupt. For me, it's very delayed here. Can you see Charlotte Samuels now or not?
Not yet. I can hear her, but I can't see her.
So there is a problem. I will move backwards. So it's out of synchronism. Okay? I will start here. Let's see. No, it's not going as well. Just to check if is it full screen, if it's go better. Please go. No, it's not going. No. Oh, it's a shame. I can hear. No, it's not running. Here, Charlotte. Oh,
So, do you
I
want
don't
to
know
ask
why.
me questions, or do you want me
Yes.
to talk?
What occasion did he use to use the Zoopraxiscope?
Well, Muybridge gave a series of lectures he toured Europe and America in the 1880s and 1890s, and he would give demonstrations. So
No, it's not running.
slideshows to his audience with
It's
his
okay
magic
to
lantern
me.
slides, showing
Okay.
his work, also showing art historical images and his photos.
Oh, it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. I will stop. I am the a professional editor. I'm the. I cannot afford something like that. I can't.
It's not good
I'm-
enough, is it?
No, it's not easy. I went to Kingston to make this film. It's impossible to run. So it was the idea just to show the video from this how the zoo praxiscope works, and also we have a Stephen demonstration with a very technical accuracy of his, which is characteristic from his speeches. But when I was in Kingston and see the wood box that the magic lantern would be inside it, I realized that there, when Muybridge would make a presentation, necessarily he must be with other people, servants, etc. Of course. And there is a very important lecture from when he was in Mahet's apartment in 1881 in Paris, when they finally met each other in personally, not just writing. And it was a very private presentation. And because there were like 15, 20 people, just Mahet's friend, scientists, journalists, etc. And I was trying to realize how did he could make that in a private situation with this huge instrument, with these enormous discs. If it starts at 8 o'clock, how much time before that he had to arrive to organize, focus, white screen? Do you have any information or imagination about that, Siu?
Yeah, he would have had assistant helping him, and then because they're using massive gas and stuff, so it would have been quite dangerous operation too. And then quite often he was using the lantern slider as well, the changing the disc and slide and all that. It would have been very troublesome. But that in terms of that the screen size, as I said, it's adjustable, depends on where you put the lens. And yeah, so you can one can only imagine how difficult it would have been. But same thing applied for many other sort of similar projection performative activity. So yeah, but he was very, especially the one you mentioned in the September in 1881 in the Paris presentation. As you know, it was a very important one for him. It was the moment of the acknowledgement and then moment of that sort of breaking into the high-end art art society and everything. Although, as you know, Marais was very disappointed actually about what Muybridge showed him. To him it wasn't science enough. So obviously, Marais was very excited about what Muybridge did until he saw the presentation. So so that's quite unfortunate. But yeah, so it would have been very troublesome thing to do. We have at the museum modern replica which was made in 1980s. Quite recently, Stephen very kindly repaired for us, so it's a workable condition. So 2 years ago, we did a demonstration event. I mean, obviously, we are using LED lights and all that, so it was easy, but still quite difficult. You have to make the focus right. There are so many things to turn and all that. So so my answer to your question is I don't know how he did it, but what I can say was would have been a very difficult job. But certainly he had one assistant helping
Yes.
him.
We have to say that this kind of lantern magic projection was extremely popular at that time. In the 80s, magic lantern industry was around the
Huge,
world.
yeah.
It was huge, but not most of them projecting animated pictures. That's the difference. Drawings.
But I think that's why, in a way, that Muybridge's career as a lanternist or projectionist or whatever you want to call it, in that lecture tour, is not that much studied actually, because many people actually, when they talk about or study about Muybridge, most of people focus on the image contents, the photographic contents of his work. But that, as I said earlier at the very beginning, Muybridge spent 15 years doing lectures, which is very long time. 15 years is long for anyone's career, but that's not really talked about or studied much about compared to other area of Muybridge studies. So, but essentially, the Kingston collection is that representation of Muybridge's that lecturing career. So that's why, again, another reason of it's unique and then important. But yeah, so that's something something I'm very interested to discover and study more about. And then the Professor Stephen Barber at Kingston University is one of his research subjects as well. So he published a couple of books about related area. But that yeah, Muybridge's lecturing career is something to study more. You know, it is because I think because it's a performance, it's not like evidence. Material evidence is left from it, other than just notes and the newspaper, clips and So it is quite difficult subject to study, but certainly it's a long enough time for us to pay. We really need to pay more attention to that 15 years of his lecturing career.
Yes. Do you have the idea how many lectures like he didn't, or it's impossible?
Oh, I should know it better, but I can't really tell you the exact figure, but would have been hundreds. And the last lecture, I quite like actually. His last known lecture was in 1897 in St. Ives in Cornwall in England. St. Ives is a very artistic town. It's a beautiful seaside. Loads of artists live there.
Yeah.
He gave his last known lecture to Artist Society.
Wow.
So I think it's quite
amazing.
poetic, it's
Yeah.
nice he finished that way.
Yeah.
Also, he was actually quite interested in sort of educational setting as well. So
Yeah.
we know he given a couple of lectures in the schools and stuff like that. And then obviously his probably career highlight was when he given the lecture in London, Royal Society in front of that, Royal
Wales.
family and all that stuff. Yeah, Prince of
Yeah.
Wales and stuff. So that would have been peak of his career, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, but so yeah, he that's why he is fascinating, because he could adopt contents of his lecture to mundane normal people, to artists, to sort of science related or intellectual. So that's again is his persona coming through there. He was very much like person of huge passion and ability of presentation. He can do all sorts of things. Public engagement, he was ahead of his time.
And in this London performance in the Royal, I always make a mistake. Royal Society or Royal. There is a Royal
Academy,
Academy.
he did both. Yeah, he did both. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this one where the family was there is a transcription
Yes.
that I got in touch in Stephen Herbert's The Complete Muybridge. And this document, it's a kind of very important document, this transcription.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I think it's a Hendricks book has that in the appendix. If I can.
Ah, really?
Yeah. So it's published, and also another sort of script is in the collection of National Museum of American Indian. American history. Sorry, I beg your pardon. So that has also a script of the Muybridge lecture in their collection. So it is known, but I'm sure he would have done lots of additional things which he wasn't written. So
Okay.
that's what I can imagine. But yeah, you can
Now,
find the script.
Yes, but in this, what called my attention in this transcription, that there was no notation about the projection of the animation from the zoo praxiscope. It goes until the very what I understood is the very last magic and lantern slide. And when it starts with the movements, there is no. I realize that maybe it might be that has changed the aspect from the performance, going through a more austerity, a science moment in the beginning, related with the movement of the horses, etc. And then when the zoo praxiscope animations goes to the screen, the idea is that for me that transformed in a entertainment, a more funny, and the prince asked to show the box sequence again. There is only flavor aspects that are not so. So it makes me curious why there is no notation from that moment, which is part of the high point of his performance. No.
I mean, you probably right there actually, because as it's, in a way, it's related to what I said earlier. You know, we might actually over value, or maybe we put high sort of overweight on the superluxoscope, maybe more than what he actually regarded of. Who knows? I mean, you're right to think a lot of his lecture contents probably focused on lantern slide projection, and the superluxoscope might not have been the main part of it. Quite likely, and then I do think many of his lecture probably didn't involve superluxoscope, probably just lantern. But that's again, it's the legacy thing, you see. So lantern isn't that exciting in terms of
novelty.
the modern, yeah. But superluxoscope is. This is one and only, and one of the first projection device. That's why we, in a way, treasure this machine more than maybe Muybridge did. But that's very possibility.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't very important as to him, to Muybridge, as what we thought. But certainly it was enough important enough for him to carry that from all that time to here, and then he continued his lecture tour involving the machine. But as you said, what degree, how much, don't know.
Yeah. And of course, the possibility to make this performance is to have money, to publicize his books, to sell books,
That's
to
right.
promote himself. No?
You made a very interesting point too. Again, we sort of put lots of glamorous view to Muybridge's lecture, but as you just hinted, the reason why Muybridge had to do so many lecture tours is because he had to make money. When he finished the animal locomotion in 1887, he was in huge debt. You know, the promise he made to University of Pennsylvania wasn't delivered. Not many people bought his prints. So University of Pennsylvania was in financial, problem. Muybridge couldn't sell his stuff. So he sort of made some degree, he had to do lecture tour to earn money. So it's history is fascinating, because why happened and what happened and how something happened is not necessarily what we want to hear quite often.
Yes. Yeah, great. We are going through the end of our conversation, and from everyone who are watching us, I have to say that before every interview here, we made a pre-interview or pre-contact in the week before. So last week, me and Seoyoung meet each other here in this space, and we made up a very some appointments, and the last one related to to the museum is about the scrapbook. You talk a few about it, but I would like to present again with no sound, so we can keep talking while see the images from the scrapbook from the very first. I hope it runs now. I will make everything so slowly, so the buffering will help me. Oh, look, it's a good point here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Muybridge scrapbook. So, I'd like you to comment what the importance of this scrapbook in Muybridge studies.
Yeah, so Muybridge sort of collected this newspaper, articles and then notes and stuff for over 30 years. So the very first cutting in the scrapbook is about this Alaska trip in 1868, and not much about landscape at all. Actually, it's all, and then it's a lot. Mostly is about his locomotion photography, and there is nothing bad about or negative or nothing personal life or it's so it's heavily edited.
Yeah.
So it's like, look at me, how great I am. Look at this amazing thing I've done. So that includes lots of newspaper cuttings, some articles, and then actually there are one or two the French article as well. So that was donated to Kingston Library actually, and then it was it was available for public use at the beginning. And what you see is
Really?
actually, yeah. So what you see is actually is rebound. The outside, the cover itself is actually rebound because of the falling apart. But one of the most interesting thing about scrapbook is that the cover page actually at the video clip shows very briefly there are addresses of his houses from US to Kingston, and every time he moved, he sort of did a stroke. He put the strike line,
Oh,
and then
really?
he said, actually, I can't remember the exact word. Basically, say if we find this, the award money is $5. So he obviously cares very much about this scrapbook, and
Yeah.
yeah, so. As that the video say, to me this is a very fascinating insight into how Muybridge was, that he's very much like modern persona, his self-promotion, sort of self-projection, and then think about the gesture of giving this to your local library for people to see. He wanted to tell people, look at me, look at this amazing thing I've done. So in terms of commercial value, maybe not as high as Zoroscope or other photographic prints,
Yeah.
but this is one and only. It is like his diary. It's like his autobiography. It's about himself. Muybridge haven't written much. Hasn't written much. He didn't produce many like a written text really.
Yeah.
But this scrapbook, it says a lot about who he was. So that scrapbook is again one of the most important items which is held at the Kingston Museum.
Yes, I think that I learned a lot about Muybridge when I was writing my book in the aspect of dealing professionally with your career. I have a kind of phrase that it's on my head that privately Muybridge was a little bit media class in San Francisco, etc. But outside the door, he's an artist. So he has to promote himself, not because it's a ego idea of the artist. I am a showman, I have internal lights, I am a kind of star. But the necessity of promote is part from every artist, since he or she is related to public. Of course, you can create your art in the countryside, in the Floresta Amazonica, okay. But if you are not promoting, it's part of the job. It's not only related with your own persona. You have to. And the idea of scrapping book, it's a kind of document of that. He made to the eternity. No? So
That's right. That's right.
it's very important the way that Muybridge deals with his career in general aspect, not only creating.
Yeah. And also another interesting thing about that is when he died in 1904, the librarian and the curators at the Kingston Library and Museum continued to sticking things on the book.
Really?
I think the last entry is 1920s, I think. So scrapbook also has its afterlife.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is like, diary or something, it's a living thing, it had its own life. Obviously, we are not doing that any longer. But yeah, it is a fascinating object, and yeah, so we're hoping to show it more to people in the coming future.
Yes. So let's take this keyword, coming future. I would like to ask you, what's your plans to the future, you, Seoyoung Kim?
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate. We've been fortunate enough, very grateful of getting this funding from Paul Mellon Center. So I will be focusing on cataloging of the collection from this year for 2 years actually. It has been already cataloged by Stephen Herbert. But I think we feel that there's need for a deeper level cataloging with the images and all that, details. So I will be doing that. So I'm very excited about it. So outcome of the project will be online catalog to start with, and then I'm hoping to, hopefully we can do the printed catalog as well in the future, but that's another project. But certainly online catalog will be outcome of this catalog project. That's very exciting. And we've been doing lots of activity about Muybridge now. Actually, we do like an annual festival called Muybridge Week. And in fact, last year, 2020 was 990th anniversary, the birthday anniversary of Muybridge. So we did a Year of Muybridge project. So we did lots of social media posting and stuff. It was meant to be in-person activity like festivals and performance and stuff, but due to the current situation, we had to cancel all. So yeah, so lots of activities to educate people in the local area. All of that is actually a lot to do with reclaiming Muybridge as a British person. You see, many people, even now, some people
Yes.
think Muybridge is American. Because
Anglo-American.
Yeah, because he spent 40 years in America, and then his photographic career is completely in America.
Okay.
There's no picture of anywhere else other than America, except Central America, obviously,
yes.
and then some part of Canada. But it's very much in the American sort of context. So, but we continue to say, Muybridge spent 35 years in Kingston, England.
Okay. Yeah.
So we try to claim back him as a Kingstonian. So that's sort of our institutional effort. We wanted to present Muybridge as an innovative, creative, some kinds of huge pioneer at the time. But to us, he was a British person. So
Yes,
we focus there a lot.
and also because he was born in Kingston upon times. I've been there. I see with my eyes. It's a kind of a traditional, yeah, very important city from the history of the I forgot the empire. The oh, what's the name of the
Victorian.
no, not Victorian. The kings that were coronated were
Oh,
from the
Anglo-Saxon. Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon. Sorry, the Anglo-Saxon empire. It was a very important city, and not only an important city, that the family of Muybridge family was engaged with commercial, traditional, with corn, and then with I forgot, with carvão. It's the
Coal.
coin. Yes,
Coal.
coal. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there are many aspects that remember us that Muybridge is a British born and British persona, no?
Yeah, also, I mean, that's why he's interesting. You know, I mean, we today we only talk about his motion picture as in a study, but you know, he was very, very good landscape photographer too. He's one of the main American West landscape photographer in 1860s and 70s, right? And the quality of his photograph is some people actually sees it from coming from his European education. Actually, you know, he was very much exposed to that sort of education in UK, and then also because he was a bookseller and he was selling lots of nice prints and drawings and all that himself. So he saw lots of nice quality material. So his intuition or artistic ability, you know, of composition and all that was already there. So he was you know, he had it, you know, I think before he became photographer. So yeah, so that's a very important aspect. You know, if you go to California, many collections has Muybridge's sort of landscape related urban landscape photographs. To them, Muybridge is one of the photographer who refined the Californian identity. You know, it is he is seen in the historical context much more heavily than locomotion context actually. So that's another interesting aspect, because in America itself, Muybridge's presentation is quite distinguished between East and West, especially in the California area. He is one of those photographers. He showed the development of the California in the late 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
In the East, is all about locomotion photography. So it is quite distinctive in East and West. Yeah, so that's another main aspect of my research, is that I'm mapping these different collections, the major collections.
Amazing.
So, and where we, Kingston Museum, fit in is a huge aspect of my research. So there are, so to speak, 4 preeminent Muybridge collections: us first, and the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., George Eastman Museum in New York State, and Stanford University, both Cantor Art Center and University Library. 4 of them are regarded as the most important Muybridge collections. So it is very interesting and important. And also in 9 years' time, there will be 200th anniversary of Muybridge's birthday. So I think hopefully we will be able to do something collaborative, but who knows? But yeah, so I just wanted to, when I have a chance, can I just read this out for you? This is a book by Kevin McDonnell. It's a very first biographic sort of book. It published in 1972, right?
Okay.
very end of this book, I love this part. It says, it's really very end. Can I read?
Yes, please.
Though museums cannot be expected to donate original material, I wonder if it would ever be possible to assemble prints and copies of all known Muybridge material at Kingston. It is the place where he was born and where he returned to die. He left his own personal record of his photographic career to the local museum and library. No other place, not even San Francisco, seemed quite so appropriate. Perhaps one day, historians, students of photography, and everyone interested in Muybridge and his great work will make a pilgrimage to the town by the Thames. I so like it.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, so yeah,
fantastic.
it will be great if we can do something all together in Kingston in 9 years' time to celebrate his bicentenary.
Yeah, that's great. I will be there.
birthday.
I will be there.
Uh,
So, Sion, I think we covered. Of course, I would love to be talking with you for hours more, but we have like an hour and 50 of conversation.
yeah, we've
Was
been talking a lot.
really, really, really great time. I learned many things. It was a really pleasure to talk with you. I would to thank you again, your availability and how you deal with things. It's really, I think you are part of a very good generation. That's
Oh, thank you.
and of course, after cataloging, making your cut, you are going to be master and one of the leading person in knowing Muybridge in the world, of course.
Oh, I'm touched. Oh, thank you
So
for having me. I enjoy talking to you. I always like talking to you. It's always a pleasure.
okay, so we are going to say goodbye, and next week we are going to talk with Richard Krangle, that you know as well, a specialist in magic lantern, and it will be a pleasure to come back here. And thank you for everyone who watched us and was with us in this afternoon. We now have a tropical rainstorm here. I can hear. So I think, Sion, it's time to leave now.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.